you playing?
Hello and welcome to What the Bleep Are You Playing? A podcast where we play a game many times, today included, a bad game, and tell you why the bleep we played it. I am Sean, and after this game, I'm in need of a beatdown. I have gang leader Thomas here with me, and also Mason is here to change your clothes so you don't know who you are. How you guys doing?
I like how this implies I lead, like, this massive gang.
You made us play the game!
You would be the yeah, it would be you.
Yeah, but unlike Go Vacation, I know this piece of shit's bad.
You open this up by saying we play games, and boy did we play a game. This is a game of all time.
Beat Down Fists of Vengeance from Capcom and developed by Cavia.
Can we just linger on that title for a little bit? That sounds like a really bad Steven Seagal movie.
It does sound like it, and when you get into the immediately as it starts, it feels like a bad Steven Seagal movie at times.
Yeah.
Well, in Japan and many other regions, it was just called Beatdown, which still is a bad title, because that also sounds like a bad action movie. But then in America, they were like, no, these Americans, they need that extra push. So they added Fists of Vengeance.
I can understand now why you would gravitate towards this game.
Oh, yeah.
You're right.
Connoisseur of garbage action movies.
Fuck you. You're right. You're absolutely 100% right, but fuck you.
I played this game live on a streaming channel.
At Les Bros Gaming on
Les Bros
Twitch.
Gaming on twitch.tv/Les Bros Games. But I played that today, and honestly, I went into this game blind. Most of the games I don't go in super blind. I know a little bit about, or I've seen a little bit, or in a lot of the cases played some beforehand. I had no idea about this game, and from the moment you boot it up and start playing it, you're just like, oh.
Yeah.
You're like, oh no.
That's the one thing that I think that I can say is good about this game is that you know exactly what you're in for
Look, as soon as
it starts.
As soon as Stephen Blum starts talking in an Irish accent, you're like, oh, okay.
Is that what it was? I couldn't.
Yeah, it's
tell.
supposed to be Irish.
It's supposed to be, and I was like, I think that's supposed to be Irish because it's, gangs. So I'm assuming because it's an American gangs they're doing because there's the Italians.
Yeah, it's supposed to be Irish. I only know that because I literally looked it up, and he said like Raven is an Irish American gangster, or something like that.
Were there any? Are there any Yakuzas, or is it just American gangs in this?
Look, there might be.
Because I spoiler alert, did not get tremendously far in this game. Eventually, I gave up because
I got to chapter 5 of 7, so I almost beat it, but
I was in 4, I think, 4 or 5.
yeah. So
I only did one chapter.
You know what? You probably made the best decision.
I was just thinking, how funny would it be if every single time the Irish character comes up, House of Pain starts playing.
Beat Down Fist of Vengeance, as said, Capcom produced, developed by Cavia, is a third-person action RPG / beat-em-up video game for the PlayStation 2 and then was ported over to the Xbox. In Japan, it's simply known as Beatdown or Beatdown.
It is a bad title, like you said, but it is a better title.
It's gonna say it's still not good.
It almost kind of sounds like a working title.
It does.
Yeah,
It kind of a little bit sounds like, we're gonna call it Beatdown, and it feels like, this is Beatdown 3 or Beatdown 4, but we're not gonna put the number anymore on it. We're just gonna call it Beatdown Fists of Vengeance.
Yeah, and I think they called it Beatdown, one, because of the fact that it is a third-person brawler, but two, when you interrogate people, I don't know if Mason got to this, but I saw your stream, and I know you got to the point where you can interrogate people. There is the option to beat down, which is you just beat them to death.
Yeah. I did that a couple of times. I beat him down there, and every time I was like, oh no, my notoriety went up too high.
It feels like it would be the fifth game in the series, and then on the box art they would emphasize the V in vengeance, like the Roman numeral 5.
I'd actually love that. Like if this was the 5th, I'd fucking love that. Beat down Fists of 5 Vengeance.
Do the fan force stick thing.
Okay, look, this game isn't good. We got to make the one.
But I'm also sitting here like, would I play a Fast and Furious game in this sort of style? And the answer is absolutely yes at this point.
No, what you need is these are just like the levels like this are just miniature levels in between the car riding. So for the
Yeah.
most game, it's just ramping off cars and stuff, and then you occasionally will just play as Vin Diesel walking around beating the shit out of people.
I couldn't even play a somewhat competent version of this game. I don't think.
I would easily play a lot more, and we'll talk more about what we would do with this or remake when we get to the remake
we
and
get to the
reimagining
end,
when we
portion.
get to the
But
end.
I
This game has potential.
there is a lot in it. I think Thomas and I, when we were talking before the podcast, I think something that came up was it feels rushed.
It kind of was rushed, but that's because this was being developed around the same time as Final Fight Streetwise, which is another third-person brawler with a gritty art style published by Capcom. So they were trying to get both of these out. And Capcom had the idea like, well, we've got two games that look and kind of feel the same. Surely one of them has to be successful. Nope.
Neither of them were.
I mean,
Nope.
this
Beat
one
down.
was mediocre. The PS2 was fairly successful, enough to they wanted to port it over to the Xbox. But again,
enough.
not like enough to be like, oh my gosh, this is a huge success for the company. But it did have enough. It did sell enough units and things like that for them to consider it a success.
Sadly, not enough to get beat down fists of five engines.
It does, and I think I mentioned this about Marvel Nemesis, which these games are kind of similar in a lot of ways. They can
Except-
build. Nemesis controlled better, which is weird considering how bad that game controlled.
That's sad. Like, that's really sad.
But it felt like a first attempt at something by a studio that if they had been maybe given another chance to work on another game, that they could have fixed some of their errors and maybe made a better game. There's definitely a feeling a little bit on that.
Which this was the studio's first attempt at like a 3D brawler, and it does. I think this is a bad game to have your first attempt at something like this be, because it's just stacked to the brim with mechanics and stuff like that.
The amount of times I had to ignore the advice because I just don't. I'm like too many menus popping up telling me words, and I'm like, I don't want to read. I want to play, which means there's a lot of things I was like, oh, I could do that. Oh, well.
It's gonna say you're like, oh, this piece of shit. Where do I go? And I'm just in the comment section like, you look in the blacklist. Oh,
I did get lost a little bit.
Too much reading, and too
There's
much
a
of that.
lot of reading.
and that's just because there's so. Like I said, there's so many mechanics. There's RPG elements. There's the 3D beat 'em up elements. There's the fact that you can control a gang. There's the open world. There's the side quests. There's the fact that the
Open world.
quote unquote, yeah.
Yeah.
There's the fact that the 5th chapter has a fucking paywall.
Okay, speaking of open world, this game came out in 2005. There had already been 3 fully 3D Grand Theft Auto games by this point, I
Not to
believe.
mention, I'm pretty sure there had already been, or was in development, a PSP Grand Theft Auto was in the works at that
Yes.
point.
I think
Because I think 2006, 2007 is when the PSP one.
well, there were 2, so I think
first one?
I think the 2006 one.
At the very least, I know Grand Theft Auto 3, Vice City, and San Andreas were all out by this
And
time.
at this, but it's also was a Japanese studio, so I don't know how much they were copying on it because there were a lot of clones of Grand Theft Auto at the time, and this doesn't feel like they knew a lot about Grand Theft Auto. I'm sure they play a lot of it, but it doesn't feel like this was trying to be a Grand Theft Auto game.
See, Mason's right because it
Okay.
because it absolutely was. They were trying really hard to replicate the tone, not necessarily the open world aspects, but the tone of Grand Theft Auto. They wanted to make this gritty ass American crime game.
I felt like it was trying to be an American version of Yakuza. Is kind of how I felt this game was trying to be.
Kind of,
the Yakuzas, or even Shenmue, like Shenmue a little bit, maybe the gameplay mechanics, kind of that. Those are the kind of the games more I felt than Grand Theft Auto.
There's a game I haven't thought about in a long damn time. Shenmue, jeez.
well, it's not worth thinking about.
I like Shenmue too.
I couldn't get past the first game.
Look, you can just play arcade games the entire time. It's fun.
I
Spend the
realized
entire game at your arcade.
I realized
Set your
that-
clock for your Dreamcast clock.
I realized this, but also like kind of the whole purpose of the game is to be a martial arts badass. It's funny at first to see this martial arts badass ignore his destiny to go play Virtua Fighter, but then you're like, I kind of need to
You're
get
like,
on with my
that's
destiny.
my destiny. My time has
I was
come.
gonna say that's my destiny, but
But yeah, this game, it feels it's weirdly off. And the tone kind of feels from a studio that maybe didn't understand what they were trying to make 100%.
Yeah, I think it's on the Wikipedia page, but there's a quote I really like from the developers where they were getting interviewed about this game. And the interviewer asked, like, did you have to do a lot of research for this game? And paraphrasing here, they said, no shit we did. We're fucking Japanese developers trying to make an American-style game. No shit we had to do a lot of research.
Yeah.
And you can definitely tell.
Well, I'll read you a couple of the quotes here from the Wikipedia page. Beatdown Fist of Vengeance was developed by the Japanese company Cavia. According to executive producer,
You're on a roll today.
Tatsuya Minami,
So
the
you
game was
combine two
created
words.
specifically to succeed in the U.S. market. Initially conceived as a PS2 exclusive, Cavia quickly considered expanding development to other platforms and ended up choosing the Xbox due to its strong sales in the same region. Minami claimed that while producing Beatdown, the team took into consideration games within the crime genre that were popular in the U.S. When asked if any films were a direct inspiration, he answered, I can't think of any specific movie right now that influenced us, but rest assured, a staff of entirely Japanese people doing a game that takes place in a gritty American urban environment needed to do plenty of research.
That kind of spells it out. Like, shit, we have no idea what we're doing. And I'm not.
That's kind of why this game, the mechanics, I feel like they tried too much to work on the mechanics and figuring out and doing too many things, and not enough time on telling the story. Because legitimately, I was interested in the story.
Yeah.
But it's just the way it's told and how little you get information in it.
Yeah,
I just didn't care enough.
I was gonna say, I think there's like just a couple cutscenes. I know there's more like later on in the game, but in the beginning, there's a lot in the prologue.
Oh yeah, it's a very long prologue.
And after that, there's not one until like I want to say chapter 4 that isn't a boss introduction. Like there's cutscenes where the chick with a katana comes out, or Vega, whatever the fuck his name is.
Oh, the guy that you were stuck on. How many takes?
54 times to beat him.
In an hour. 54 in exactly an hour.
Well, so this game has RPG elements, and so every time you level up, you get to put you get to put 3 points into stats: stamina, attack, technique.
Yeah.
And I go into my normal fighting game thing, where if they're doing this, I pump everything into attack, because I'm just going to be like, I'm going to punch a bunch of times and win as the game goes on.
Here's a tip if you actually do plan on playing this for whatever reason. Don't do that.
Never do that. No. You put something into health for the love of God.
So, I had very little health. That boss was hard.
Yeah, it looked like it.
54 attempts.
In an hour.
Look, I actually do have a funny story about that boss. So, I got to the boss the first time.
What's his actual? It's like Lin
In ego.
No,
Inigo.
it ends with CY. I know that.
And see, I don't fucking know.
I can't remember his name.
Vega. I call him Vega.
He has the Vega claws.
Yeah, Wolverine.
Wolverine vampire.
Vampire Wolverine.
Yeah,
there we
Vampire
go.
Wolverine. That's what you said. I beat him on my first try.
I did not.
And then I forgot to save. So I had to go back. And that was the time where he was like, fuck you, I'm just going to block everything like I saw him do with you.
Blocking, he moves faster, everything just... You know, in a fighting game, in your average fighting game, if somebody's attacking low or high or mid, you're trying to block. But in this game, weapons can stop blocks and go through blocks. But you can't block necessarily with a weapon. So if he's coming down with his powered up attack, they're unblockable. And a game that is trying to use 3D mechanics does not let you circle around very much. You can, but it's very hard to do because you just don't move.
You're supposed to be able to, but yeah, you just can't move that great in this game.
Which actually in the, when they have like the group attacks and you're running around and you're fighting multiple enemies, you move a lot better. And while this game sorely needed a better lock-on ability, at least in that, it feels like a beat 'em up. You're moving around and all things. When it breaks down into the fighting game element of the one-on-one matches, that's arguably, in what I've played, the worst developed part of this game.
Yeah.
Is the fighting
Easily.
game. It's not a very good fighting game.
And that's saying something, because that's a lot of the focus.
It is. Like, every boss fight is in that fighting
And
game style.
that's the problem, is because the beat 'em up's just a bad beat 'em up. Like, it's whatever. It's a bad wander around that needs a lock 'em mechanic. but it's not like, oh my gosh, this is unplayable.
Yeah,
It's the fighting
it's
game,
the
the mechanic that starts to really, especially because the game gets harder very fast.
and like Mason said, that is a lot of the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for the way the map was set up, and I understand that they're not going to like introduce you to all the things, but they're like, go to this area. And I'm like, oh, where is that area? Because usually I like to think of like, for example, Saints Row the Third, a game I love. Does anytime they introduce you to a new area, they send you for a mission to that area. They walk you through, and then if they have you going there for like side missions and things like that or anything, you know where the area is. They're like, here's the bar, and also look at your map occasionally. And I know you could do side missions and maybe find more of the stuff, but the map is just like, there's very little hand-holding in this game, which is okay, I guess. But
It would be okay in a better game.
in a better
Yeah,
game,
exactly.
or one of that you'd want to explore, but it's not like there's anything you actually are going to find to explore. Like I was going to go down to the abandoned subway and punch Scooby-Doo Man. There's a guy that when you talk to him, he goes, "What?"
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Anyway, I had way too much fun
Forgot
with that.
about that. Look, this game has a lot of fun, quote unquote, with its NPCs. I'm not going to
Yes.
say that's a good thing, because that's another thing. I don't mean to say that they shouldn't have spent time with it, but if they were, they should have taken time away from something else, because they try to give every NPC, like at least a lot of them. There are some that just named man, woman, wanderer, jogger, stuff like that. But like a lot of
Tosser.
them have, tosser.
Which, if you're in
Animal.
the UK, I'm sorry I said that.
Animal, the
I'm
guys
not.
that carry the big thing, the barrels at you.
Oh fuck, those pricks, yeah, those sons of bitches.
This game, in a lot of ways, feels like what would later become Saints Row. Like the Saints Row the Third. It seems like a proto Saints Row the Third in a lot of ways.
Which
Because
is
a lot
weird
of the
because
same,
it's
it's a different company.
Yeah.
But a lot of the same elements of what Saints Row does with the gangs and enemies attacking you and finding things and the way it's set up is actually very similar. It's just that is a good game.
Yeah, and you say it's a proto Saints Row the Third. It feels very similar to another game that I love, that this game really tries to be. It is another third-person beat 'em up. Might add it to the list. The Warriors.
Oh yeah,
This very much feels like the Warriors for PS2.
which it was made by Rockstar.
Yeah, Rockstar.
Yeah, so that was when in between their one of the Grand Theft Auto games they made Warriors and a couple of other games.
Yeah,
they
and
made a table tennis game too.
I didn't know that.
Xbox 360.
Was Bully around that time, or was that after?
I don't remember which one. If it
I
was.
think Bully was.
Bully
maybe
might-
a little after.
Bully was, if it
It might have been around the same time. 'Cause it might have been different subsets. Of
I think
the
it was
company.
around the same time, yeah. But the Warriors, here's the thing: the Warriors is very similar to Beatdown Fist of Vengeance, where it's a tiny, open, quote unquote world.
Mm-hmm.
You wander around, you kind of do these side quests. Here's the difference: the Warriors has focus
Mm-hmm.
and good beat 'em up mechanics. This game does not.
Has neither.
Nope.
Focus is a good word to describe what this game needs. It's just focusing on something because it is trying to do too many little things at once, and the game feels very disjointed.
It feels like it's just a lump of game.
Exactly.
It's like
There's lots of game in this game.
yes, that's exactly how I would describe it. There is
It's-
this game is made of game.
It's like they took a ton of games and just put them in a blender.
It really is. It's like Beatdown Fist of Vengeance is like the Toyota Corolla of video games. It's just kind of there. It's not even like it's not even noticeably bad. It's just there.
I'd
Yeah.
say it's noticeably bad.
There are elements
In
that
a-
are noticeably bad, but overall, I don't think it's noticeable. Yeah, I agree. Like, a lot of it is just there.
It's
there
yeah.
are things that are bad. There are things that are kind of interesting, but they're outweighed by the bad, and it's just there.
And I
It's
mean-
it's like how you describe it. Instead of like taking everything, throwing it at a wall, and seeing what sticks, they took all of it, threw it in a blender until it was just a flavorless
paste.
it's just a flavorless
Beat
lump
down
of
paste.
game. That's
With an Irish accented Steve Bloom as the garnish.
yeah.
Now, you mentioned the Irish accent in that, but that is one of the elements that actually I thought was pretty good for the most part, aside from a couple things. The voice acting is pretty good in this game.
Yeah, the voice acting.
It's not a great script, and
Yeah,
it's a Japanese to English translation, so that's going to happen with some of it. But
If you ever decide to play this game at home, fun little game for you. Every time they curse, take a shot. You'll be in the hospital that night.
Oh yeah, they swear so much in this game.
There's so much needless swearing.
Especially if you play as Raven, the quote-unquote main character. It's a beat-em-up, so you can select the characters. But
there are 5 of them.
Yeah, but Raven, Irish Steve Bloom, is basically like the main character because he's on all the box art. It's him and Aaron, I believe, are the 2 main characters.
I think that was, yeah.
Literally, because after you do the fighting game elements, if it's not a boss fight, they'll have like this saying that they do. Like, who is your character, Sean? Lola? Yeah, she's like, yeah, run away, pendejo, or something like that.
Yeah, oh, she said, oh, you're running away in a little fight? That's a coward move. And then after you beat her, then she would be like, oh, I still have much to learn, I think is what she said. Like, and she said it a lot, and I'm like, have multiple sayings, please. Can we have 3 or 4 sayings?
Yeah,
Nope, okay.
Again, Raven, every time you beat someone, he swears, because especially if, I mean, it's a British swear or European swear, but it's still swear. Every time you beat him, he says, wanker, that's all you'll ever be too.
Yes.
That is all.
That's one of my favorite
In fairness, you know what, it's not that long after Boondock Saints had come out.
Yeah. You know what? So
That's
it was
probably what they were trying,
all the swearing.
if they're trying to emulate Irish.
Yeah. What the hell did Aaron say? Did you remember?
I don't.
Okay.
I don't remember.
I was just
They all
curious.
have one phrase, which again, focus, give our characters more depth.
Yeah.
And I understand you're trying to take on the role of the character, but you can still give
that's
more
the
developments of it, more stuff to it. It doesn't. I'm clearly not this surprisingly tall Hispanic lady kicking ass on streets. That's not me. You know,
I'm clearly not this Irish man with
face
scars.
tattoos or
Yeah. No.
Yeah, I'm not a rich kid with face tats.
so.
As much as I wish I was. No.
I just
And Mason's like, God, I wish.
our characters are just they didn't make them blank slates, but they might as well have been because it's just it doesn't matter which it doesn't matter which character you choose. It doesn't change the experience for you.
It's not.
And
It's not,
game that could have had replayability as well, even as a bad game, replayability to see what all the characters do would have been something. But
it's not like Grand Theft Auto 5, which had 3 main protagonists who were all very different. And had their own personalities and stuff. The main characters in Beatdown are just they're characters.
Yeah, you play the first chapter, and you've seen all the differences.
There are characters in these characters.
Yeah, and they're not in depth, and I think that's because they're trying. Well, one, they put in multiple characters. They're also probably trying to emulate an action movie feel, if I had to guess.
Possibly.
Because even the plot, I think you guys brought up earlier, it's very much a bad Steven Seagal movie plot. And it is. It's they're framed for murder by... Oh, shit, it is the Yakuza. I think the Yakuza is the ones who framed them for murder.
I couldn't remember.
I think it's the Yakuza. If not, it's one of the mobs. And they each go their separate ways. Raven is basically like, shit, I'm being framed. I need to find out who's behind this. Lola's like, shit, I'm being framed. I need to find out who's behind this. Aaron's like, what the fuck? So,
I think... You say it's supposed to be an action movie. I think it feels like they were trying to make a arcade game feel to it, so they didn't put a lot of detail into the characters. Like it was an arcade. You might have to leave because you don't have you're out of quarters. You know, you're done. You don't get 54 tries on one boss. You know, that sort of feeling like it was trying to be one of those arcade games. You know, but think of things like Double Dragon or those sort of things back in the day. Battletoads. Those really good side-scrolling beat 'em ups. They had. The story was simple, but they had good story. You actually had you knew your characters.
Your characters had personality.
Even if your characters were all just reskins of each,
Yeah.
they all had personalities, and that's lost in this.
Like the more recent game, Double Dragon Neon, is full of personality, and Billy and Jimmy are basically the same character, but that's kind of the joke. Is they're both kind of dumbass himbos, and that's kind of the joke. But they have so much personality that it makes up for it. River City Girls, that has the prissy one and the tough one. These beat 'em ups, these old beat 'em ups have personality to them. Beatdown doesn't have that. And they want to make it a simple beat 'em up game. Then why the fuck is it so long? Why do they have RPG elements? Why
Why
they
is
do
it
all
so
this?
complicated?
Yeah.
If you wanted a simple beat 'em up, why'd you have to go and make things so complicated?
the or the fact that there are weapons, you can pick up weapons, and it's so annoying to use the weapons.
They don't. Yeah, they serve no purpose.
No purpose.
They're more
a
of a
little bit
hindrance
stronger,
than
but
ever-
like
than
one or
anything.
two hits and they fly away, and it's
Yeah.
You get hit twice and they fly away.
Like-
they serve
Yeah.
no purpose.
And yeah, because you can like stow away an item. You can pull out a pipe or a knife or whatever. I forgot I fucking had them.
Oh yeah,
for the most part.
For the most
Until,
part, I
like,
forgot I had healing items for like the half of the game, the playthrough.
until I like accidentally hit L2 or whatever, and my character would pull out a pipe, and I'd be like, "Oh shit!" Like, I forgot I had this, and then I get kicked in the face and lose it. I'm like, "God damn it!"
So yeah, what's the point?
And also, like, look, you quit at chapter 1, you quit at chapter 4. Well, you stopped before the end of chapter 4, before the boss fight with Eugene.
Yeah, you mean Crispin Freeman,
Crispin Freeman, yeah.
Alucard from Helsing Ultimate or Helsing Ultimate.
Yeah, Helsing Ultimate. I did the
Great
boss.
cast in this game. Honestly, the best part of this game is the cast, the voice acting cast.
Yeah, it
And
is
it
a
all
very
gets
good voice
pretty
act.
much wasted.
Yeah, and that's because, again, there's just not much to these characters.
And maybe
Do it-
some of the weirdness, maybe the Irish Steve Bloom or a lot of the other things are legitimately the voice actors giving their best to try to give personality to these characters.
Yeah.
Because I never, there maybe were one or two of like the NPC lines that were like read with like no feeling or things like that. It doesn't feel like they're just like just putting there. It actually looks like they're putting a performance in. They're trying hard to like actually bring life to these fairly lifeless characters.
Yeah, like, I remember the delivery of Lola's lines and Raven's lines. I didn't watch Mason play Aaron, but I'm pretty sure I remember the delivery of his lines.
I just think the issue is because the script writing is just so horrible. It does kind of feel like they're phoning it
And
in.
again, I think that's because...
But it's
of-
you're trying to not phone in when you have just the ridiculous line. There was one. It's got some over the top stupid
yeah,
line.
the writers really let them down.
Again, wanker,
Very-
that's all you'll ever be too. There's so much of that. I heard that line so many times. It's what I go to sleep to now. But like, oh yeah, the Eugene boss fight in chapter 4. It's worse than Vega.
I don't think so. I don't think it's
Dude,
possible.
you didn't fucking play it. All right? You didn't fucking play it. This motherfucking...
Thomas is doing the whole Vietnam thing. You weren't there, man. You don't know.
Look, I still have the fucking flashbacks to it.
Oof.
This...
When your video game gives you PTSD, it's probably not a good game.
Look, this motherfucking boss fight. You were stuck for an hour on Vega. I had to legit take a break from Eugene.
I'm surprised
I
you
was
didn't.
about.
I did take a brief break after like the.
Oh,
fifth
yeah,
or
that's
sixth.
right,
I
you
took a
paused.
break,
You
walked away
paused.
for a second, but at that point it's like a lot of them were just really quick. Like he'd do a big attack, I'm like I'm dead within like 4 seconds. I'm like,
Yeah.
And look, I went in with an upgraded health bar, full health bar, and I was still getting my fucking ass kicked. And you want to know why? Because there was this whole section beforehand where you have to fight through hordes and hordes and hordes of enemies without them dropping any health, and then you have to go and fight Eugene.
It needed to have a better life life system instead of like doing the fighting game. Have lives. You can do that. So you could get through the bosses a little bit, but game's not easy.
No,
It's definitely not easy, and
Also,
it hasn't aged particularly well with the controls.
This is the Dark Souls of shitty beat 'em ups.
but like Eugene, legit, I had to take a break because I was about to have a fucking heart attack, and I went back to it, still kept getting my ass kicked, and I finally just raged. Like I went into a rage, and there's this move where you can do it, where you go up to the wall and you press grab, and your character will just slam the opponent's head into the wall. And I did that so many times, and admittedly, it probably wasn't intentional, but it was so fucking cathartic.
Well, in the fight, the boss fight at the end of chapter 3 that I was stuck on, the thing that I finally was able was when he was lying on the ground, being able to get up on top of him and punch him, and that's finally the thing because when you are able to successfully land big throws or grapples, it does a ton of damage. The problem is they are so easy to break
Yeah.
Yeah,
That-
Especially
And you leave you stunned, but don't leave them stunned when you break their grapples. You know, it's super awesome. I love the plot armor and the mechanics in this game so much.
look.
not a hint of sarcasm was heard.
Yeah, I can't detect any of it. But yeah, like, admittedly, these are not good fighting mechanics. They're not. I think we've said that 100 times. But whenever you land a big hit, it is a little satisfying.
There is some satisfaction in it.
like, especially like, I think I saw you do it a couple times. But whenever you get someone in the air and then do this fucking roundhouse and make them fly across the screen, it's like
when
that's actually dope.
whatever you do to make them fly across the screen, it feels good.
Like, that's always really
and
dope.
there is an element of possibly just because the game is frustratingly hard that just no matter what you did would make you feel good.
Yeah.
I'm trying to. Just now had this thought. The way that this game plays, for anyone who wants like a good idea of what it's like to play, imagine you're playing a really really shitty like F grade GTA clone, and then every once in a while it breaks out into Fight Club the game. That's what it is.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like.
I hate how accurate that is.
That's very, yeah.
I hate how accurate that is.
So a game with that style, what do you think would be the reviews of that game?
I looked at it recently.
Oh,
I
I'm
looked
looking at it right
I
now.
was gonna say, it wasn't good.
If I remember, the IGN score for both of them was like 4
I was gonna
point
say,
something.
it's like
4.6.
4.6.
That's right.
I know Metacritic is like 41% or
48 for the PlayStation 2 on Metacritic, 51% for the Xbox. It's the only difference.
Slightly better.
There's really only one publication that gave it good reviews, and that's Famitsu in Japan. Is about the only one. They gave a 30 out of 40. So, which isn't amazing, but still it's much better. I mean, GameSpot gave it a 5.2
But that's still
out of 10.
Yeah.
This game is not. This is probably the worst reviewed game we've played.
I would also argue that it's the worst game that we've played.
I didn't have to use Wii controls, so there is that.
I would.
You hold on. You know what? I'm gonna hold you to that because you did say during your stream that you were
That's
the last time that you were this mad you were playing Go Vacation.
They're equal. They are very close. But if I had to use Wii controls on this game, I might be angrier.
Oh yeah, that's you know what I will
See,
give you.
I'll actually give Phantom Menace the edge. I think Phantom Menace is the
Ooh,
That's
I
fair.
forgot.
so far.
I did forget about Phantom Menace.
I think
That
that's
was-
the worst.
Phantom
game
Menace
played
might have
so
the worst control. Yeah,
All right, beat down to the second worst.
I hated this much more than playing Phantom Menace
far. See, I was
because I like Phantom Menace.
Yeah, but see,
but you're a whore. No, I'm kidding.
see, here's the difference. Here's the difference between Beatdown and Phantom Menace for me. I had nothing to go off of when I went into Beatdown. Going into the Phantom Menace game, I already hate the Phantom Menace the movie, so of course I'm gonna hate the game that much more.
See, like, for me, Beatdown at least has. It's not a good camera, but it doesn't give me a headache.
It was that's
No,
fair. The problem with the camera on Beatdown is it either needed to be set with my ability to move it, but the problem is you can move it, but it's also moving by itself.
Yeah.
And it just
does that a lot.
It is the camera is
I would
frustrating.
argue the camera in this is worse than Phantom Menace.
Really?
It's
Yeah.
there. It's on par. I mean, one
Well,
thing that's
okay,
fair.
the
One thing
camera
that is.
angle is worse than Phantom
That's
Menace.
fair.
Yes.
The camera itself, in this game is worse.
I mean, we're mostly talking about on this podcast mid 2000s games. Until before, there's a few of that before and after, but that's kind of where we've been in this, which means almost all of them are going to have the camera was not good.
Yeah, even-
because mid 2000s games, cameras were bad.
Yeah.
And haven't aged vertically well because we've just finally started to see cameras and understand it.
I mean, we gushed about Sonic Adventure 2 for almost 2 hours last week, or a couple weeks ago.
And its camera's not
its
great.
camera's shit. So
But again, like in a modern setting, yes, that it actually is, and the frustration with cameras is probably never going to end. Welcome to this podcast. We're going to be talking about bad cameras on bad games. Sometimes games we enjoy.
And Mason did bring up the amount of swearing in this game.
There's so much.
There's so much swearing.
I was
And
amazed when one character said crap instead of shit.
Yeah,
I was almost
it's like, wait,
I was
what?
almost expecting one of the characters to go, where's that damn fourth Chaos Emerald?
I was about to bring that up. This game came out in the mid 2000s, so they're trying really hard to be edgy.
So
They're
hard.
just so hard to be edgy. This came out the same year as Shadow the Hedgehog. came out a year after Prince of Persia: The Warrior Within, and it came out a year before, again bringing it up again, Final Fight Streetwise, which is another one that tries really, really hard to be edgy.
The difference between all those games and this game is they're all trying to be edgy, but at least those other games all have edgy, good soundtracks.
Oh, yeah.
This
soundtrack of
game's
shit.
soundtrack, like, we've had some mediocre soundtrack games. Marvel Nemesis, for example, we talked about its soundtrack was just non-existent. You know, Go Vacation melody annoys my brain. But this game's soundtrack, it's so repetitive, and there's like 6 themes in the entire game that I played.
I will give it this. Beatdown is the worst soundtrack out of any game we've played.
I think it's so...
It's like Marvel Nemesis is boring. I can't remember a single theme from Go Vacation except the main one.
Mm-hmm.
But this game's the only soundtrack where it's actually like I'm screaming, "Shut the fuck up!"
It's repetitive. I mean, on stream, I'm just bobbing back and forth all the time because it's literally the same thing. You enter a room, it's the same little repetitive music that doesn't change. It's like 20 seconds of the same thing on a loop.
You know what the overworld music reminds me of? The menu music in Tony Hawk Pro Skater.
Except that was just the menu.
Yeah, that was just in the menu. If that music played over the entire game, we wouldn't be talking about how fucking fantastic the soundtrack in that game is.
Well,
okay,
honestly,
it does feel like menu music. It does feel. The entire game feels like menu music.
And you know what? It would honestly still be better in Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, because in Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, the levels are only like 2 minutes long. It would still be annoying, but it'd only be 2 minutes. This is like 30 minutes.
Everywhere.
Again, Sean played this game for like 3 hours on stream or whatever. That's just 3 hours of just these 30-second loops. And you're just like, oh my god, give me something else. Just
something. And this is coming off of us playing Sonic Adventure 2, so we may be a little harsher to any music because that's arguably going to be the best music we're going to play in any game.
Yeah.
So considering that playing games like, say, Grand Theft Auto at the time, or even something like, was it Driver 3 that tried to be Grand Theft Auto? There were a couple other Grand Theft Auto type clones. All of them at least had something like musically, or tried to pull in music at the time. And I understand that it was a Japanese company, so the music probably was going to cover it. But to have it that bland of a soundtrack.
Okay, I apologize. It being a Japanese studio is not an excuse for a good soundtrack. A bad soundtrack.
Not the bad soundtrack, but why they wouldn't necessarily pull in like American songs and things like that. Yeah, it's why they wouldn't necessarily pull in, say, like Grand Theft Auto, or Driver, which had just like songs that we'd have and things like that.
Okay, that's fair. My bad. I misunderstood you. I was gonna say, because every fucking Japanese song I played.
Oh yeah.
Every Japanese game I played has fire soundtracks. Like
the fact that they
except Beatdown Fist of Vengeance
did not, and that comes down to a lot of the problem with this game. Is we started with saying that it's not focused. It feels kind of lazily made. And this is not to say that the creators were lazy. It feels, everything in this feels half-hearted.
I would say it feels half-baked, but it doesn't even feel like that. It feels like it was put into the oven at the lowest setting, already covered in ice for 30 seconds, taken out, and then it's done.
They put it in the oven and they forgot to turn it on.
Yeah.
The fact that the controls and the fighting game controls made me go, man, I could play some Marvel Nemesis again.
Honestly.
That's
sad
really
because Marvel Nemesis
right.
controllers, we talked lengthy about how bad the controls in Marvel Nemesis are.
They were bad, but they were bad in a fun way.
Yeah.
This game isn't even bad in a fun way.
These are just frustrating controls. And look, I am the one who suggested this game. So if I'm the one saying this game's a piece of shit, you know it's a piece of shit.
And why did you subject
Because I thought it'd be fun. I brought the hell beasts on Earth.
So
you know how you guys were acting when I made you guys play Go Vacation? That's how I'm starting to feel now, and I'm sorry.
You defended Go Vacation, though, bitch.
I did defend Go Vacation. And I will still defend Go Vacation to this very day.
Something that is very interesting about this game.
Would I play Go Vacation over this? That's a good question. I don't know. Anyway, yeah.
The one thing that I did find myself interested in, it's just the game around there, was the story. It's a very anime-esque crime story. And I was like, that's interesting that they would try to do that with their game. And then you look at the studio and what they've made, and you realize, oh, they've made mostly anime games. So checks out why they would try to make an anime story.
And anime games mostly for the mobile.
A lot of mobile.
Good mobile games.
Yeah, I mean, they made both the Dragon Ball Supersonic Warriors, which are both fantastic fighting games.
Which, that makes me wonder if they're not just more comfortable with, like... And again, 2005, either you brought it up before or during the podcast. I have a shit memory, I can't remember. But you brought up that 2005 was a really good year for this studio because so much shit came out. Dragon Ball Supersonic Warriors 2.
On the DS, which is the best mobile Dragon Ball fighting game.
And there's just a whole bunch of other stuff that they brought up. The Naruto game, I believe.
Naruto Uzumaki Chronicles, which is fine, but again, it at least was a 3D. So, like, Dragon Ball Z Super Warriors 2 is more of a 2D base, but with you do move up and down, and you do move all in, but it doesn't have the 3D on it. But there's a lot of that element, and it has like the 2D look, and it's fun, smooth, great. Naruto Uzumaki Chronicles was more of a 3D fighter. It was fine, but that's the thing in this game feels like it is a 2D idea that they tried to force out into 3D.
And because so much came out in 2005, I am wondering if this studio wasn't spread thin. And this was just kind of the one that they pushed to the side.
I'm going to guess the vast majority of the studio was working on Drakengard. Drakengard 2.
Probably, yeah, because that's like one of their most successful games, I think.
They did make a few interesting things later on, and they tried a few things. Like they made the rail shooters, the Resident Evil rail shooters on the Wii, which I think we are going to do at least one of those at some point. So we'll get back to the studio at some point.
I was going to say, they made Bullet Witch for the Xbox 360, which I'd never heard of until I looked at this studio, and now I need to play the game because it's called Bullet Witch.
So, some of this podcast is just always finding the weird things the studio makes and then being like, God, I have to go buy that game now.
Look, World Tour is getting an episode.
World Tour. I own it now. Thank you, VeggieTale Studio.
That's Papaya.
Yeah, Papaya.
Thank you, Papaya.
I'm just going to call him VeggieTale Studio.
Yeah, that's pretty much...
Look, that's probably their most famous thing, which is sad, but... I mean, actually, yeah, we didn't hate VeggieTales.
No,
I was going to say, we actually
legitimately, if we hadn't done Sonic Adventure 2, it's probably the best game we've done at this point.
Yeah, that's fair.
Now, that may change in the next few weeks. We have some good games coming in the next few ones, so...
Okay, look, this is the worst game... this is probably the worst game I have suggested, because I've actually played the other ones I have suggested. This I bought... for $45 goddamn, by the way.
Sheesh.
It was expensive as fuck.
Is it too late to get a refund?
Yes, because I got it like 2 months ago.
Damn.
I bought this game because I like 3D beat 'em ups and I just liked the idea of it. I wanted to actually buy Final Fight Streetwise, but that shit was like $60, and I was like, nope.
I think the 60 would have been better at this point when you were already spending 45.
Yeah,
I would have just gone for the 60.
But this game, I didn't know it'd be this frustrating, this anger-inducing, because all I'd heard was that it was bad. That's all I'd heard. I didn't know it was bad in these certain ways. So I made a mistake, and I deeply apologize.
You should do a YouTuber-style apology. If you in front of a blank wall, I've made a serious and continuous lapse in my judgments.
Yeah, just me with like the red eyes and everything, like, sorry, but it's me holding up beat-down fists of vengeance.
On this podcast, we like to ask two important questions for every game that we play. The first question we ask is, how does this game hold up?
I think we've established that
it does not.
It doesn't.
The controls, the camera, even the thing about the camera is I can forgive the camera a bit for being kind of around the time. The controls were bad for the time.
I think
like the controls are PS1 bad.
Yeah.
And look, 3D fighters existed at this point. Tekken was well established. I think Tekken 4 came out before this game. Tekken 5 probably came out before
Hadn't
this
the Nina Williams game already come out too?
Yeah, but we don't count that.
It's better than this one, I think.
Probably. But the fact of the matter is this the fighting game elements wants to play like Tekken or DOA or Virtual Fighter or any of those 3D fighters. The difference is you can't control this.
It's very poorly
can't-
controlled.
You can't sidestep, and
And
that is what the hell. those
Something
games
I
are
noticed
built on.
playing this game, and I also have recently played a couple of the DOA games recently and everything, was that at the same time around this, Soul Calibur 2 had come out. And that's one of the best 3D, being able to play on all levels of it, that you can move around it very easily, not just moving side to side, but horizontal, vertical, and on every axis, you can move.
Up and down and all around.
This game doesn't allow you to move. And that is, especially in the fighting elements, that continues to be the problem. And so that's why, yeah, the controls weren't good at the time, so of course it didn't hold up. The soundtrack doesn't hold up. I think the only thing in this game that holds up is the voice acting, and that's kind of it's good for what it was.
I think I can't remember what episode it was, but I believe I described a game that we've played in the past as holding up as well as the Titanic. This game holds up about as well as the Hindenburg. It's
What the hell game was that? Was it Phantom Menace or was
Probably.
I think it
It was probably
can't remember what-
Phantom Menace.
If it was WWE All Stars, I'm kicking you in the shins.
It wasn't that one.
No,
I
I'm
know
kidding.
it wasn't that one, but yeah.
I'm kidding.
This is the Hindenburg explosion of video games.
Okay, you know what? Yeah, because it makes me want to die in a fiery explosion.
It made me say, "Oh, the humanity," after playing it.
Just like the Simpsons thing, where it's like, damn you, just screaming to the skies. It's just
Yeah.
Old
Mason
man yells at
screaming.
cloud.
It's just Mason screaming to the skies. Damn you!
And Mason played the least of us in this game.
Yeah.
I know. That's why he's the one who could do it. Both of us were too traumatized.
So our first question is a resounding no. I think we might get a little bit more out of our second question because, would this game deserve a reimagining or a remake in a modern setting?
You know, of all the games that we've played, I think this is the first one that we've come to where my answer is a resounding no on both fronts. This game needs to get the ET treatment. Put it in a landfill and bury it.
I disagree.
I don't think because of the controls, but as I said, there is a story in there that I'm legitimately interested in. If you just knock off some of the mechanics and make it one thing, or just make it a better GTA clone. Make the cars playable, things like that. Make it a little better, things like that. If you're telling me this story, I think there's something to it. A bad action movie with either a beat 'em up or even just a straightforward fighting game with this story. I agree with you that playing this game as a remake or a reimagining, but retelling this story potentially in a different game and a different setting, I am legitimately interested in.
I don't feel like it would even if it was a better open world game and it was closer to something like Saints Row or GTA or Just Cause, what would separate it enough that would make me go, I want to play that?
Vampire Steve Bloom with Wolverine claws.
What makes me go, I want to play that instead of Saints Row, GTA, or
I will
Just
actually
Cause?
say, I think they do have something that could separate it, and that's no guns. Because the fact this game.
Oh,
doesn't have
actually,
any-
you do get guns in the later chapter.
Nah.
Where? I played later than you, bitch.
Well, I didn't play it, but I just read it here. There are numerous moves the player can use to enemies in hand-to-hand combat, melee weapons in combat, and in later stages of the game, firearms such as pistols and shotguns.
Oh, Jesus Christ! You get what
Thomas's point has been revoked.
you get what I'm fucking saying.
No.
Just the main focus of those games are firearms. You know, Saints Row, GTA, Just Cause. It's all about the firearms. So I think it'd be cool if you could drive this car, ram it into this place, and then just step out and be like, "What's up, bitches? I'm here to kick your ass."
That it's just hand-to-hand stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah, I can see that. I think if I were to give a remake or a reimagining, it would be as a fighting game. Just scrap everything else and make it a fighting game.
I would keep the 3D beat 'em up elements because I think that really takes.
So our two games are separated. I'm taking the fighting game element and making it. And you're like, get rid of that fighting element.
And here's the thing about that, though. Even if you were to separate it, I don't see any merit to separating it either way, because if you separate it as an open world game, there's nothing that separates it from every other open world game, and if you separate it as a fighting game, there's nothing unique about it that would separate it from any other fighting game.
Steve Bloom with Wolverine
With the
Plus.
same weapon that Vega has in the Street Fighter games.
Yeah,
What's
but-
supposed to... Why wouldn't I just play Street Fighter? Why wouldn't I just play Mortal Kombat?
Steve Bloom.
I'll bet Steve Bloom is a background character in any of those games.
He voices Sub-Zero in Mortal Kombat.
There you go.
Sorry.
There you go.
That's what I get.
You revoked my point. No,
Now
no.
yours has been revoked.
No, but like, again,
I just like revenge stories.
I was gonna say maybe it's because I'm a sucker for shitty action movies. No
Mm-hmm.
shit, but like, either as a 3D beat 'em up, hell, I'd even take this as another form of media. I take this as a comic book, as a movie, something like that.
That's fair.
Just, I think this game's story and a lot of the beat 'em up ideas, again, it's super satisfying to pull off some of these combos. They have potential. The problem is this game is just spread way too thin.
I definitely agree with that. I think this would be at least more enjoyable if I wasn't an active participant in it.
So-
if I was witnessing this, if it was a movie, then I would at least have more fun.
Here's
poking
my
around.
idea.
Poking fun
Take
of it.
the game and like they did the one time they made Driver into a Game Boy Advance game.
Oh, sweet Jesus, I forgot about that.
Put this game into a Game Boy.
You son of a bitch.
Make a beat down demake. Oh
Yeah, but-
God.
Yeah.
Legitimately, because a lot of the control issues are because it's in 3Ds. Let's go down a level.
They're gonna make it like a top down for like the early GTA's.
Yes. This
Jeez.
instead of a remake, we're demaking this.
Oh dear. Honestly, it probably would make the game better.
I don't think there's anything that you can do to make this
This is fair.
worthwhile.
I disagree, but again, that's just, I don't know. I'm not saying this would be a great game if it was ever remade, but it is something that I think I always want to look at the potential in any game we look at. Like there's going to be some games where we play where it's just like, no, there's no potential here. This game's just kind of a piece of shit. But I always want to look for
I think I think that is actually a good idea. Simply is that every game has potential, or every game has something you can take from it and use it. And whether this game, look, this game's never going to get a remake or a reimagining. We know that. But my definitely thought on it is like there are things. The thing that I did enjoy and interested in is there is an interesting revenge story if the characters are fleshed out, done better. In this weird anime style that they're trying to go to with these weird bosses and strange characters, I think there is something there.
I think it'd be
I don't know where. Maybe it just needs to be in an anime. I don't know, but
Yeah,
there's something
an
there that
anime,
I'm legitimately,
a comic, a movie,
I'm
something
legitimately
like that.
interested enough in. But this game could not bring any of that out.
And I think that's because even Mason, I think Mason's been the harshest in this section because we're like, yeah, you can have potential. Mason's like, burn
There's
it down.
none. There's
burn
no.
it down!"
There's no potential
But
in this.
I will say, even Mason was like, if it was a movie, I'd at least have fun pointing at it.
Okay, yeah. There's
pointing,
okay
laughing.
for
but
that.
Like,
yeah,
but like
as a game, there's no potential.
as a game, it's all right, boys. Top 3. Beat Down, Phantom Menace, or Go Vacation. What's your ranking?
I'm playing
No,
Phantom Menace every time, and the other two are going as far away as I can.
of course you
I'd
are.
play Go Vacation and leave the other ones behind.
But you can play better versions of Go Vacation. If we didn't have the remake or reimagine, there are better versions out there.
Yeah, but there's what? Look, we're choosing between these, not the better versions of them. If I was choosing between the better versions of these, I'd choose Grand Theft Auto.
And if we're choosing between the better versions of these, I'm honestly choosing Revenge of the Sith on PS2.
And look at
But-
that. But
Shit, are we all just gonna pick our games? Because I would probably pick Beat Down.
they're all not good.
No,
they're all
not
not
good.
something that needs to be necessarily revisited. But hey, this is why we're here on a great podcast to bring these insights to you. So what do you guys out there think about Beatdown Fists of Vengeance?
Do you have
then
any
there's-
opinions
and then-
whatsoever?
I was gonna say there's some people who will be watching this. Like, what's your opinions on Beat Down Fists of Vengeance? The what?
So, if you have opinions, you can leave a great review at Apple iTunes. If you you can just type in some nice little words or some angry little words and then give us those nice little 5 stars and say, yeah. You can follow us on all these other platforms where you got there. Spotify, Stitcher, Amazon, Google, Samsung,
I think that's all.
Not
of them.
SoundCloud. Not
Not
SoundCloud.
SoundCloud. But a lot of different podcast places you can find all of this.
That's just-
Let us know how we're doing on those sort of things. And look, we're going to be back next week with a better game.
Yeah, a game that doesn't piss us all off.
At least a better game. I don't imagine us finding a worse game. At least not. what
At
we
least
have
not
planned
this
for
season. At least
So
not
thank
this
you.
season.
Thank you all for tuning in, and we will see you next time.